Well, welcome into our interview set here on the Sports Mandate, and today we are lucky enough to be joined by ESPN Boston's very own Brendan Hall. Brendan, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun with this.
You're our first ever in-studio guest here on the Sports Mandate, so this is a milestone.
How do you be part of history, Jim?
Yeah, you are a part of history.
Part of history. I'll start off the questions. I just wanted to know, when did you start with ESPN and how did you start with them?
Yeah, I started in May of 2010. We launched the high school site in August of that year. So this is going on our fourth year doing high school football across the state of Massachusetts.
So you were kind of a pioneer of high school coverage in Massachusetts?
I wouldn't call myself a pioneer. There's guys, my seniors, who are well more versed in this pioneering stuff than me. I'm just riding their coattails, I guess.
Well, people in New England are really engaged in high school sports, and ESPN Boston's a big reason why. You guys offer a unique perspective on the wide world of high school sports. So why is your content so unique?
It's a good question. You know, we kind of went about it. We wanted to cover the entire state. No one had taken a venture where they try to tie the entire state together, do an all-state team, do statewide rankings, true rankings, you know. And so I think this is a small enough state where we can do that, and that certainly felt like a niche, you know, and that's created more buzz, like, well, is this team from Springfield really better than this team from Reading or Burlington, or is this team from Worcester really the best team, you know, in Massachusetts, not some team from Mansfield or Lynn or Lowell or whatever. And that's just created more buzz, really. I think people really have caught on to it. And, you know, the way we go about it a little bit differently. I think sometimes you've seen it with this more national publications, but they go about it more of a pop culture way, or they don't really get in depth the way they do in other sports. And I wanted to give it a level of coverage as far as depth, breaking down the X's and O's, going inside a player's head and strategy and what have you, that to a depth that hadn't been brought before. So I think people really appreciate that as well.
With high school football, you don't get as much of the coverage. With the exception of ESPN Boston, there's not that much in-depth coverage of high school football. So how do you guys get all your information, and what's that process like, because there are no sports information directors for high school football and things like that?
Well, I wish they had sports information.
Yeah, that would help.
You know, some ADs out there, they do a great job of making sure the message is out there. Stat upkeep and alerting to the media to, you know, recruiting commitments, coaching changes, stuff like that. That's gotten a lot more advanced from when I first started, a lot more, you know, as getting into the technology, slowly coming into the 21st century and alerting everybody. To be quite honest with you, there's no shortcuts. I kind of go crazy a little bit trying to keep track of this. I mean, we do our Mr. Football Watch every Tuesday, and literally on Saturdays, Sundays, I'm scouring through the box scores and newspapers, online databases, just to keep up with everyone's stats. And you know, there's no real secret to it. It's just a lot of hard work and just being really in tune to the details.
Yeah, because your job is such hard work, how much easier is it made? I'm assuming you find it enjoyable. How much does the fact that you enjoy your job make it the hard work easier?
I wouldn't be in this if I didn't enjoy my job. I mean, for you guys are in high school, right? I mean, you've probably sat through a ton of rousing speeches from adults about, you know, make sure you like what you work, right? Yep. Make sure you love what you work. And growing up, all I ever wanted to do was be involved in football, and this is a terrific avenue, and you know, it strains you, it exhausts you. I think there's once a week I get really exhausted. I just got to totally unwind. But you know, I wouldn't have it any other way. This is the best time of year. This is my favorite time of year. It's the fall. You got Friday Night Lights of football, and then you go right into basketball season, which is just as intense. You know, it is a lot of hours. It's a lot of hard work. You feel like you're going to drop at the end of the day. But holy cow, is this a fun job, isn't it, fellas?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
How'd you get involved in all this with writing and sports and all that?
I mean, you want me to give my career treasure here?
Let's hear it.
I mean, when I was your age, guys, I started off as an intern, as a senior in high school at my local newspaper, the Gardner News. You know, just answering phones and doing box scores of local, you know, men's league hockey games. Gardner's a huge hockey culture. Some of the stories out of there are like the NHL, pretty much, you know. But, you know, from there, I worked at my college newspaper for 4 years, the Massachusetts Daily Collegian out at UMass. I think I wrote for every section of the paper. I covered the police for a year. That's a fun beat in a college town, let me tell you. Yeah. You know, I did lots of stuff. I did a co-op at the Boston Globe My first internship was at the Worcester Telegram after my sophomore year, and then I went to the Globe. And I also did some news side stuff down in Florida at the Florida Times-Union. I did a lot of news again, fires, homicides, all that stuff, all the crazy hard news stuff. And then I came back up here. I wrote for the Globe for a number of years, doing the high school notebooks for all the regional weeklies. And this opened up, and an opportunity awoke. And as Billy Bean would say, luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And that's how I got here. But a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, gentlemen.
So you have a very big presence on Twitter at BHallESPN. Follow if you already don't. So how does social media change your job? We mentioned that you were verified already, but how has social media changed your job?
It certainly is a very resourceful tool for getting the message out, to the masses in an instant second. When a lot of times with I don't really have an office, so to speak. It's not like where if I was at a newspaper, I could, some news breaks, I could call in a few lines to the desk or something like that. Right. News breaks, whatever I'm doing, I could be in line at the supermarket, I could be cooking, I could be, whatever, and I gotta find a way to just get the news up there. Twitter is great for that, breaking news. It's great for, sometimes I use it as a way to collect information. Hey, I'm looking for this, and this. Can somebody help us out? We've done that a couple times a year. The thing you got to get good at is having thick skin, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of impulsive tendencies on Twitter, as you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of the banter back and forth. I think it's great for discussion. People have questions, you can answer them. Some people say it's more trouble than it's worth. I think there's a lot of value to it. It's about balancing it out. So
that's good.
So what's the best player in all the years you've covered high school football here in Massachusetts, what's the best player you've ever seen?
Guys, this is going to sound crazy. I mean, I've been in this for 10 years. I'm 28 years old. I didn't see any of the 1980s Brockton teams. I didn't get to see, Omar Easy, Diamond Ferry, guys of that ilk. In my career, best player I've covered, you're gonna love this. Jonathan Thomas from St. John's Prep, really best player I've seen. I mean, how many times out of Massachusetts do you get a 4-star running back who is being told by college programs that he's going to be a program changer?
Wow.
I mean, this guy was a total package. I mean, I covered Jordan Taubman at Dartmouth. That was in my infancy with the Globe.
Right. And now playing for the Jaguars.
He's now playing for the Jaguars. Finally caught on to an NFL team. Proud of him.
Vulturing Maurice Jones-Drew carries.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, he ain't getting any younger, right?
Yeah, right.
So. But Taubman obviously had that top flight speed, but Johnny had the power with him too. I mean, he goes down to Florida last summer, runs a 4.47 laser time 40-yard dash. I mean, that is rare for a 200-pound running back to have that at a high school level. I mean, you look at him, he might not have 5% body fat. I mean, he every bit muscle, and he is a powerful running back. I mean, you see some of the clips, the play against Brockton, the 40-yard, looking like a Tecmo Bowl, Bo Jackson run there, just totally shed. I know it's before your time, but just shedding guys. The interception return against Central Catholic a couple weeks ago. I mean, that's a once in a generation play. I could go 10 years and not see a play like that again. He's just a special kid, a specimen, the total package, a rare player for this era. You have to put him against, like Armani Reeves or Richard Rogers, guys of that ilk, but Johnny is the best I've seen.
So you just touched upon this a little bit, but what makes a good high school player, and how does that translate to college and the pros, if it does necessarily?
Yeah, well, the college scouting, it's a unique thing. Obviously, size is important to a lot of these guys. The level of physicality at college is far beyond what you'd expect at the high school level. You need to have the type of body type to endure all that physical activity. It's just so much more intense at the college level. I think that's why size is at a premium for some of these guys when they're scouting. I don't think it's fair to project NFL potential for a kid who's 17, 18 years old. Football is, as you guys know, it's such a wild.
Right.
I can tell you, even from a college recruiting standpoint, the big boards for these guys when they're recruiting kids, it varies sometimes quite dramatically from program to program because of scheme. For instance, look at a guy like Drew Bledsoe, okay?
Yeah.
Who was a can't-miss prospect, once-in-a-generation kid out of the state of Washington. Okay, but he's 6'5", 245. He's not running Johnny Manziel's offense, right?
Right.
He's not running the Oregon offense.
Yeah.
He fit into a very specific mold at Washington State. And then a guy like Johnny Manziel, would he play well, okay, probably a bad example. He could probably play anywhere. But some of these mobile quarterbacks, would they fit into a pro-style offense? Denard Robinson, would he fit into what Matt Ryan was running at BC, pro-style offense?
Yeah.
It's all on scheme. So you see some of these kids that are committing to colleges at a high level, and obviously the question is, really? Well, how does he fit there? Well, obviously there's a certain scheme and that they fit a certain niche, a certain role. You got to remember, colleges are recruiting for essentially 25, maybe 30 positions. And there's a wide variety of skill sets that these guys have. I think when you're scouting a high school player, usually there's one intangible that sticks out athletically. For instance, Jarrell Otto, the safety from Leominster who's committed to UMass, goes to a Rivals combine or whatever it was, combine down in New York in April, and records a 42-inch vertical leap.
Wow.
Or 41.8, whatever it was. I mean, there's guys in the NBA that don't have a 41.8 vertical leap.
Yep.
That's pretty special. So when they see he runs a 4.7 or 4.8, well, he's got this intangible vertical leap. You cannot teach that. He can make some great hawking plays in the secondary, maybe be a defensive athlete, sneak in and out of the box. Tom Roderick from Leicester. 6'3", 240 pounds, just looks like a built kid. Also runs a high 4.5 40-yard dash. That's something you can't teach. That's an intangible.
Right.
And colleges are willing to take a chance on a kid like that who maybe doesn't get the level of competition he gets being at a Division V Central Mass school, but you see the way he stands out. You get that one intangible that makes people say, well, I think he's worth a scholarship. That's the kind of stuff that really makes a Division I scholarship player, I think. You look down our top 10 list right now. You look at Troy Flutie from Natick. You look at Lubrin Figaro from Everett. Going to the prep schools, you look at Connor Strahan from St. Seb's, Kevin Cohey from Roxbury Latin, et cetera, et cetera. These guys all have one just unteachable intangible. Athletically speaking, I mean, you see Troy Flutie and the way he just runs around the pocket, and whether or not he's a quarterback at next level, that seems to be up for debate. But certainly, he's got pedigree with his father, Darren Flutie, the CFL legend wide receiver, obviously of Boston College ilk as well, and his uncle is Doug Flutie. But they all have that speed, that make him maybe a wide receiver at the next level. I don't know. Wherever he fits, he's just an athlete.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Most of these guys, it's just. They have something you can't teach, beyond just instincts and smarts for just something physical too. I think.
Well, this season, one of the biggest changes has been the new playoff format. So first off, do you like this format?
I love it. Usually this time of year, we're in the first week of October, second week of October technically, and this is when the action just starts building up, really. The drama just starts building up because the league title races are coming into focus. You're starting to get it out. For me, and I wrote about this in a column over the weekend, the action picked up right away. It just went into overdrive in week 2. The points are so important. So every game feels like that much more important of a game. And it also gives a ton of teams chances they wouldn't have had before. I mean, Methuen has the top seed right now in Division I North. Can you believe that? Methuen, who would have thought that? Maybe the second or third best team in the MVC Small. They're looking at a first-round home playoff game in the highest level of competition in Massachusetts. Who would have thought that? You look right now in Division III. There's 2 teams in one of the either Northeast or Northwest. They're 0-3, sitting at the bottom 2 seeds. Who's to say they don't go on a run these next 5 weeks? Barnstable, completely out of the picture after week 1, after getting embarrassed by DY. Now looking at a home playoff game in probably the most competitive division in the state, Division II South. You look at Leominster and St. John's, kind of hold the core out in D2 Central, but what's to say another team doesn't just shoot up, the next 5 weeks or so. Really just so much unpredictability, and that makes every game that much more important. There is no week off. No week off.
How do you think the players are responding to this schedule? Do you think they enjoy it more?
Absolutely. They love it. I mean, you ask a kid, and I know Thanksgiving is the elephant in the room, and that's wonderful and all. And, the best rivalries will survive. Fitchburg-Leominster is still the most heated rivalry in New England, and they could be playing in a parking lot in April, and they will get people to come out to the game, okay? You ask a kid, a typical high school kid, would you rather play at Gillette Stadium for a state championship or beat your rival on Thanksgiving? I think you'll be surprised that most of the kids will probably say, I want to win a state title at Gillette Stadium over the Patriots.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal for any high school athlete, to win a state title. And this is obviously a much more intense variable that, and I think it needs tweaks, obviously. I for one would like to see the regular season expand to 8 games maybe. I'd like to see automatic qualifiers just get the kibosh. I think what West and Central is much more easier to figure out. Power rankings straight up. You can have your league titles. It just we need to streamline this thing. But I think for most high school kids, I think they really enjoy this. You think about how many more teams that now have a chance at a state title.
Right.
You're looking at well over 100 teams now, as opposed to, say in the GBL, for instance, where Everett has won close to the last 20 league titles.
Yeah.
The other 4 teams in that league now feel like they have a shot at a state championship. They don't need to win the league.
Yep.
There's nothing better than that.
One thing TJ did kind of touch on was the Thanksgiving game. And now with the playoffs come before Thanksgiving, so if you get out of if you're out of the playoffs, you have to play meaningless games until Thanksgiving. Do you see maybe them getting rid of the Thanksgiving games altogether because players maybe not like these meaningless games in between?
Well, that's going to vary from rivalry to rivalry. The best ones will survive no matter what. I mean, you look at Thanksgiving rivalries in other states where there's a state championship going on, Missouri, Maryland, Pennsylvania, etc., and they make it work. Like I said, Fitchburg, Leominster, you're guaranteed 8,000-10,000 a year at that game. I'll tell you, I went to North Plymouth South 2 weeks ago. That's a Thanksgiving rivalry. And for a 4 o'clock start on a Friday afternoon, most people getting out of work, man, they packed this thing over capacity. The good rivalries will always survive, no matter what the conditions, no matter what's on the line. It's good bragging rights. Needham and Wellesley are always going to have bragging rights. I don't know how the Reading-Stoneham rivalry is. I've never covered one of those games, but
it's not great. But
but do they?
We want to beat Stoneham
right.
as Reading, but Stoneham doesn't always put up the best of a fight. But
notwithstanding, is that a good crowd for those games? Do they come out for that?
Yeah, definitely.
It's about bragging rights. It's about fraternity amongst your peers in the community. Really.
Yep.
It's about so much more than just is there a league title on the line? Is there something at stake here? It's about more than just that. It's about bragging rights, and how cool is that?
Yeah.
One of the things I am interested to see would happen. I wrote it last week that maybe they should move the season up a week to Labor Day weekend. It's something I've talked about in the past, but what about moving some of these Thanksgiving games to Labor Day weekend? People are still home. People haven't gone off to college yet, maybe in some instances. It's a 3-day weekend. A lot of festivities going on. You can make a lot out of that. I think there could be potential there. Obviously, I'm kind of just throwing stuff out there. It's going to get harped on Twitter or whatever, but it's something that I've kind of thought in my head for some time now. I'm curious to see if there's potential there.
Definitely. If you were, I know you said that it's not fair to, predict NFL potential for any high school player. I'm not going to make you do that.
Yeah.
But if there were some players who you could see succeeding in college and then possibly making that jump to the next level, who do you think they are right now?
Well, obviously it starts with Johnny Thomas. I mean, that guy is going to be a program changer. He has a chance to, obviously, if everything goes well with his surgery and his recovery, he has a chance to see the field immediately. I look back a couple of years ago with Richard Rogers at St. John's of Shrewsbury, and that was a kid you knew was going to get on the field early, and he has, and contribute right away, and he has, and that's someone who could potentially be an NFL draft prospect. Of course, now with that, he's actually produced in college, so people can make that assessment. You look out at Armani Reeves at Ohio State, and Cam Williams as well at Ohio State, the two CM prospects. And they got on the field early. Armani Reeves was out there for the last play against Northwestern on Saturday night. Those are two guys who could have potential if everything goes right for them. I mean, you have to give a kid a little bit of a window and see how they do in college, because there's just too much that happens. I mean, how many guys in the NFL, how many tight ends have college basketball experience with very limited football exposure? Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, Jimmy Graham. It goes on and on and on.
Right.
How many guys, go into college as a one-star, two-star prospect and end up getting drafted in the first round? Eric Fisher last year, Kansas City Chiefs, first overall pick, two-star coming out of high school. You look at some of the rosters on a Super Bowl winning team, and how many guys who, as far back as they go with the scouting services, will rank the 2-star or the 3-star.
Yeah.
You'd be astounded to learn that it's a majority of the players.
Really?
So there's just too many intangible, too much unpredictability, too many variables that can happen in a short window of time to really accurately project. But that said, if you were to talk about NFL potential, I think if all goes right for Johnny Thomas, I think we could be hearing his name in a few years from now.
Really?
Yeah.
So what, if you take an NFL player, any NFL player, the best NFL player, the worst NFL player, an average NFL player, what do you think most of them looked like in high school? Were they all the best player on their team?
Most of them were. Some of them, it varies. I think with linemen, where it just takes longer to just develop and just grow into their body.
The more weights you lift.
There's guys that you see this a lot in basketball. You see a kid who's 7 foot, can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, and they got all these colleges all over them already, and you're like, well, wait a second here. And then by the senior year, they're just turning it on. They're getting a triple-double a game. They're just, and the same goes with linemen. I think the best example I can think of is Breno Giacomini of Malden High School about 10 years ago. He's now the starting tackle for the Seahawks. This is a guy who was looking at doing a postgraduate year and maybe playing D2 basketball. He was 6'7". Hadn't really played football much until his senior year. Had an incredible Thanksgiving game against Bedford. One of the coaches on the staff at the time at Malden happened to have a connection with Bobby Petrino from the days at Montana. Sends game film from that Medford game. Within 6 days, he's down at Louisville accepting a scholarship offer. And then he makes it on the field as a true freshman blocking tight end. The rest is history. He moves from tight end to tackle in the pros. And he's got that mobility from that basketball background, the footwork and everything. He's able to make a transition. So, like I said, there's so much that can happen to a prospect. It's a matter of just how they grow and how they mature and how they develop at the next level.
Well, Reading's got a quarterback many Reading residents are hoping to see at the next college level in Drew Belcher. What have you heard about Belcher's college decision?
It still nibbles, it seems like, from everything I've heard. You ask him any updates, and there's really not much updates other than the usual, Boston College or Delaware or UNH, the usual suspects at the 1A, 1AA levels. I think colleges want to see his senior film and see what he's made of. Obviously Reading isn't off to the best of starts, but I certainly think he has potential to be a scholarship quarterback in college.
Do you think colleges, when they're looking at high school players, look at the region in which more players are fostered out of, or do you think they search individual players themselves?
It's a good question because, and this is a question that came up last year when if you recall, Jakari Washington from Everett, on nobody's radar, might have been rated a 2-star or no star, just really no information out there about him. And the defensive line coach for Everett just happens to bump into a Wisconsin coach at a banquet. Next thing you know, Jakari Washington is talking to the Wisconsin coaches and committing to Wisconsin 2 weeks before signing day out of nowhere. And one of the things I had asked John DiBiase on signing day is, why do you think this phenomenon happens? Why more college coaches aren't coming here as opposed to, other areas? And he made a good point. It's like fishing. You want to go to the lake that has more fish because you have a better probability. That's why so many coaches go to Texas, Florida, California. You can play the odds and find a good recruiting class. I think more college coaches are flocking to the area now as opposed to they were 10 years ago. You've got Maryland, Virginia area coaches coming up here. You've got Wisconsin certainly has been very active since that Washington commitment. They picked up another nice one from Lubin Figaro. You're seeing schools from New Jersey, from Big Ten area, Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State. But it really comes down to playing the odds for a lot of these college coaches, and Massachusetts is kind of a tier 3, tier 4 school in that regard. There's on average 10, 12 scholarship players for FBS in a given year. How much that rises with UMass now in the MAC remains to be seen. But I think you'll be seeing more activity. There was a lot of activity this offseason, more than I can recall in any of my years at ESPN Boston. And a lot of that with Steve Addazio at Boston College making this area a priority. As well as UMass making this area a priority. And it's interesting to see them going back and forth on recruiting battles. And UConn always in that mix as well and making this area somewhat of a priority. I think certainly they're a little bit more receptive than they were years ago, and I think people are realizing there's some talent around here.
Yep.
So this Reading team right now has not had the best of starts. They powerhouse last year, but you still got to think there's some talent still on this roster. Do you still have faith in this team?
Well, certainly with Drew Belcher, I think you have to be in the hunt. And Liam Keneally, Di Loretto, you have some real intangible pieces there. It almost seems like we got kind of spoiled the last couple of years watching Reading just roll over opponents, put up 30, 40 points a game with ease, take starters out at the half. And maybe they didn't have as much power as we thought. We kind of took it for granted a little bit. You look at their record the last couple of years and just how they kind of breezed by opponents. This is a different team, but you look at that D2 North, and boy, it's wide open. There isn't a real juggernaut on that list, man. And we've kind of it seems like we've written them off, hasn't it, after that Arlington loss? But boy, they're still right in it. I think what has hurt Reading is, starting their season week 3, which I think is ridiculous. Nobody wants to be hitting each other for a month. There's just too much that can happen negatively.
Yep.
And part of that is their offense too. It's not built to blow teams out, even though they've been blowing teams out.
Yep.
It's more conservative. It's more 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But the defense has really held its own, I think. They've had their lapses, but inside the red zone, I think they got a pretty good. They've done a pretty good job of minimizing points. And as long as you can count on that, this team can only get better from there. I really like the pieces here in the front 7 for Reading.
So what are your predictions? You mentioned the D2 North wide open. What are your predictions for the D2 North this year?
I still think Reading can come out of it, but I just think whereas a lot of us in the preseason, myself included, thought that they were the heavy favorite.
Yeah.
Looks like they're going to have a little bit of competition.
Right.
But I still think in the end, John Fiore is a tremendous coach, and he's got a great track record with this of winning in playoff games, and I think he has enough to get it done in the playoffs and come out of D2 North. Now, once you get out of D2 North, it's a whole other ball game, fellas, because you got some really strong teams across the state.
Yep.
But as far as D2 North, there's no real overwhelming contender here. I think they have a great shot.
Brendan, with all the research you do in this, have you ever thought of starting a Boston High School Fantasy Football League?
Well, gambling's illegal, fellas, and no, it's gee. If I were
You
to
ever get that question before?
we've talked about this actually as a potential business venture. No, but no, I don't know. I think there's too much to keep track of. I think I'd go nuts doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be fun. That'd be very interesting.
That would be fun.
That would be wild, gentlemen. That would be
Absolutely.
wild.
Well, that'll do it for our for John, for Brendan Hall. I'm TJ Horgan. Thank you so much for being here, Brendan.
Thank you.